Alrighty, g'day everyone. I'm Stuart Keen, Head of Community at FinTech Australia. Thanks for joining us. And I'm thrilled to be joined by Cameron Buckley, Regional Director APAC at Trustpilot, FinTech Australia's new corporate partner. And today we're going to speak a little bit about how Australian fintechs are going overseas and how they can build trust through yourselves and other trusted partners, of course, as well. I want to bring it back to a little bit about building trust in financial services, which is such an important piece in all markets in any case. And so obviously we feel that first piece might be around financial regulation and doing the right thing by a customer or a business before anything else happens. It's probably one of the most important things in financial services that a trusted partner is there. So how do you feel about regulation and then playing into what the offering is that Trustpilot has?
Yeah, I think you're right, Stu. I think trust now, that people talk about the trust economy. So obviously fintechs are part of a broader financial economy, but they're also clearly part of the trust economy. And it's interesting, as you say, it is such a critical and topical factor now in business around trust, how you grow it, how you show it, how you earn it, all those type of things. And when you think about it, the nature of fintechs, really, it's quite critical in the trust piece, in that people are giving up their personal information. And they're giving up in a lot of cases more than they might just in a straight e-com transaction as well. So they're giving up a lot of their ID before, obviously going through that, know your customer, and all of those sort of pieces are going through. So that the transaction is quite complex, and the sign-ups, etc., in terms of what's expected. And then you've also got the transactional nature as well, that you've got people's hard-earned money in a lot of instances, depending on the type of business that you're in, the type of fintech, etc. So it is fundamental of actually, again, earning that trust. And the interesting part, if you think about trust as I suppose a commodity, if you like, or a very important factor. Interestingly, I've been looking at trust, sort of working in marketing and the like for some time. And a company that I refer to is a global communications agency called Edelman. And they've been tracking something called the Trust Index for 20-something years. And interestingly, the more recent reports, sort of 21, 22, I think 21 was probably the one that stood out for me, is that they're saying over that period of 20 years, consumer trust has never been at a lower point, right? And this is globally and locally, and they dig into why, and why people are so hypersensitive to various things at the moment. And it's probably not a surprise, and it definitely connects to fintechs as well. But when you think about it, consumers are hypersensitive to it because of all of the hacking scandals that are happening across the globe and locally. So they're talking about fake news and misinformation. So the internet being a place of information, but equally misinformation. There's this mysterious dark web that's going on, and all the undercurrents that come with that. And all of this is, if you like, percolating and coming up in mainstream media. So there is really a sense of fear around that trust or sort of mistrust. And, I suppose relating that sort of more broadly, but bringing it back to Australia, it wasn't that long ago that, the banks were under sort of Senate inquiries and the like as well. So be that, institutions of all types in the economy or the general population, citizens do have this sort of sense of mistrust. Not always, but, that independent research is saying that on one hand, you've got this dichotomy really, that we've never been more reliant on the internet to make purchases, transactions, be that e-com, be it financial services and the like. But on the other hand, you've got this dichotomy where people, a bridge where people are just, trust is at a record low. So yeah, it sort of sets the scene as to, it's not all doom and gloom, but it does set the scene that there are some challenges. And that's certainly something that's, obviously we can explore today to talk about how to overcome those challenges, be they local or global.
Absolutely. And I think when we caught up the other day, Cam, we spoke about a brand or a company expanding overseas and really not having a presence, or no one knowing the company when they're entering a new market, which is a real challenge, especially for some of the fintechs we work with at FinTech Australia and at Austrade as well. So what would the advice be that you have for them in a local, from a local standpoint, what they have to consider before they then jump across the ditch or up to Southeast Asia or elsewhere?
Yeah, look, and I suppose I can relate to this myself. I've spent seven or so years living overseas, helping set up tech businesses over there, be that I think it was in Malaysia, well, it was in KL, so Malaysia, Singapore, and also London. So, you know, I understand the trials and the tribulations and sometimes the stress around it, that, you know, essentially you're starting with no clients, no revenue. You're not starting with any brand recognition, not a lot of proof. And you know, the important part of today's economy too is around SEO and a presence online. So, you know, starting that is, and obviously yourself, FinTech Australia and various other bodies help with, you know, setting up structurally, financially structure. But then there's a lot of things, other things that you have to contend with. And the way that we look at with our clients in the financial services sector or other sectors as well, is you really should be leveraging the goodwill and credibility that you've built at home. So, you know, in most instances, you don't just go global straight away, you know, hit the go button and then all of a sudden you're in all these different markets. Typically, you've proven the concept, you're battle hardened, you've built out a good customer base that's given you the revenue, etc., on the home soil before you start putting flags in different parts of the world. So if that's the case, and in most cases it is, how do you leverage that goodwill from your customer base to actually, if you like, as the stepping stone to then take it overseas? So when you do land there, you've actually got some credibility. And in our case, that's in the form of customer reviews. Yeah. Because, you know, we like to say, and a lot of businesses sort of feel this way as well. We've got hundreds of thousands of businesses that we deal with, is that there's no one that can do the selling for you better than your own customers. And I think that's even more relevant when you are going overseas, where you don't have any of that brand recognition and history. They will rely even more so on the credibility of your customer base and the proof point of other people that have made purchases or transactions and, you know, experience your service. And it's not just about a few, you know, it's about building up some credibility in terms of the volume of reviews as well, so that when you're over there, you've actually got that backing and essentially the safety net that you need for other consumers in different markets to make the big step of either giving their credit card detail or their personal information and then sort of moving ahead with you. So yeah, we definitely advocate you know, taking the time to build out some reviews and then using that as the springboard to then go internationally and helping you with some of those challenges that I raised before.
And these reviews are not only coming from just an individual consumer, but it can be a B2B play from what I understand. So the FinTech Australia ecosystem, about 400 members that are companies, large and small, 60 to 70% of them play in the B2B space. So it's not only a foreign exchange platform, a stockbroking or crypto platform, or a neobank with an individual as a consumer, but it could be a business writing reviews on Trustpilot on behalf of kind of one of their suppliers or whoever else. So could we hear a little bit about that and how the B2B application is also really, really important?
Yeah, I mean, our FinTech customer base is broad locally. You know, you think the non-bank lenders, Prosper, Moolah, Athena, Liberty, Wiser, etc. But then if you think some of the, you know, the global players as well, there's Afterpay, there's Xero. So, you know, there is a B2B and a B2C element to it. And I think sometimes there is the misconception that consumer reviews or customer reviews are always just leaning or exclusively for that sort of B2C transaction. But our experience is, having been in the business for since 2007, the same principles apply, right? And in some cases, it's even more pronounced. Like I look, again, personal experience, the FinTech that I referred to in the introduction was in the B2B space. And funny enough, we were a Trustpilot client. And it wasn't about getting thousands of reviews, but it was about, we were quite proud that we had a 4.9 star rating from 100 reviews. And that's in the B2B space, right? And so it's all sort of proportionate. And, we often look at, we help our customers with their review collection methodology. So it's automating it. So make sure that it's not labor intensive, that it's plugged into your own systems. So it's sending at the right stage, it's got the right content, it's branded correctly, the wording's right, etc. And if you're doing all of those things correctly, on a B2C side, we often talk about if you can get 10% of your customer base responding, think about that as a very good representative sample. Now, when you take that to the B2B environment, often you can get much higher than 10% because you've got deeper, stronger relationships, etc. You don't have as many, but you've got deeper relationships. So, if you're transacting with, let's just say you've got 1,000 clients or transactions in that B2B space, if you could get 15% of that, for example, then you got 150 reviews, which is credible. And in our case, in a B2B fintech, we were using those reviews, we were displaying them on our website, we were using them in proposals and pitch decks. Essentially, they'd be on email signatures, etc. And that was a way of building that trust in the same way that our B2C customers do.
That's really interesting. Thank you. And then I'm keen to know about the credibility of the reviews or potentially the scrutiny that they go under. So someone might look at this and say, oh, they're overly positive reviews, or someone's trying to tarnish our brand because they're a competitor. What's your take on that?
Yeah, it's an interesting topic. And it probably goes back to we were talking before about, trust being at a record low in terms of consumer trust for the reasons that we touched on before. And, our view as a independent open platform is that we have to sit between businesses and consumers. So we have to be impartial and equal. So in that sense, we put a lot of time and effort at being the world's most open and transparent platform. And, what that means is that consumers know that they're being represented well. And that when they're looking at reviews from the businesses that we work with, that there's a level of scrutiny over that as well. So not all reviews are viewed the same because there's different types of reviews. In simple terms, there's an organic review where someone just finds a business and leaves a review, right? Then there's an invited review, which might be deemed to be a little bit more selective. But importantly, there's a verified review. And the verified reviews are the ones essentially where businesses that we work with are actually sending review invitations to everyone. They're not being selective. So therefore, consumers now are educated to the point that they understand what verified means, and they also understand, organic and invited. So they will put greater confidence on businesses that actually where they read the review, where they see the little tick that it's a verified review in that category. So, our philosophy is if we win the confidence of the consumer, then the businesses will equally benefit from that as well when they're all working in this sort of ecosystem where there's greater trust as well.
Cool. It's good to know that they go through some scrutiny and it's not just bots or something like AI writing all these reviews and everyone ending up with a 4 to 5 star review.
Yeah, look, and we are talking, obviously the audience is in the tech space, right? FinTech Australia. So people understand bots and how that works. And, what we do, we spend a lot of money on fraud detection software. And every year we are removing reviews in the millions. So, the fraud detection software will pick up those reviews that look suspicious based on IP addresses and other measures that it goes through. And we've been tuning that software for a long time. And we take that very seriously because, again, we want to represent it both on the consumer side and the business side. And then equally, technology always will get you to some point, but you do need a human layer over the top. And we also have a very large number of people in our content integrity team. And what happens both from a consumer perspective and from a business perspective, if something looks a little bit suspicious and either of those two parties raise it as that looks like a fake review, or some competitors jumped on and it's not a legitimate transaction, you can log that case. We call it a case. You can log that case through the platform, and then the content integrity team will look at the individual circumstances of that particular case and deem it either it has broken guidelines and therefore should be removed, or it hasn't and should stay. So we get down to that level of detail and granularity between the mix between technology and people, having a look over the top of it to create a very transparent, open environment.
Doing the reviews on the reviews, it's an interesting one.
That is true.
So you touched on some interesting pieces there around technology partners, which I'll jump into shortly. But you also noted that there are millions of fraudulent reviews. So keen to hear a little bit just on numbers broadly. Do you have kind of total numbers of reviews, or how often a review is written on the global stage on Trustpilot?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, if you go back, there's 238 million reviews have been written on Trustpilot. Wow. And sort of more recently, we're talking about looking at the last 12 months, 2022, there was 46 million. So you do the math on that and you work backwards, that's over one review per second that's coming through that consumers are leaving. So however long we're chatting, every second there's a new review coming through the platform. And, that's advantageous for consumers because they get the chance to leave their views and opinions. But it's equally advantageous for the businesses that we deal with, because that's obviously that volume of consumers is lending itself to a great environment to display, your brands, your business. So, we talk about, being in the top 1% of websites globally. And really it's much higher than that. So, in terms of eyeballs, interest and the like, it's very important locally in terms of the Australian business, but it's quite interesting, and we're probably going to talk about going global and levels of maturity in different markets when it comes to reviews and the way consumer behaviour might differ. But it's even more important when you look at, say, the UK, parts of Europe and the US, if that's part of your sort of land and expand aspirations. And I can share some stats around how that sort of differs between markets when it comes to research and how consumers sort of view reviews on a relative level.
For sure. Thank you. Super interesting. And I think those markets that you touched on, UK, EU, are the ones that are in high demand for Aussie fintech scaling overseas. So we'll dive into that. I think that's what I want to bring it back to a little bit as well, the global expansion piece, and Trustpilot being potentially a credible partner, or definitely a credible partner for Australian fintechs looking to scale overseas. And going down the avenue of technology, a company moves into a new market. Trustpilot is also working with different partners through your domain authority piece, through Google, through SEO. How does that continue to add credibility to a company's trust?
Yeah, look, I think I touched on before about the importance. So there's some sequential steps that you need to sort of go through. And the first one is getting the review collection piece right. So it's making sure that, again, it's automated, that you don't have sort of manual processes, and it's representative as well, that you're inviting all your customer base to build up the volume. So there's technology there. It plugs into, we've got integration. Being a SaaS business, as you can imagine, you've got integrations with major technology partners, both locally and globally. So we make that part easy. Then the trust piece is, once you've collected those reviews, then it's about displaying them. And displaying your reviews can work in two different ways. In the first sense, it's, if you're going global, you want to make sure, and it's an expensive exercise, as everyone knows, to actually, if you're in the PPC game and you're paying for real estate, if you like, on Google, particularly in bigger markets and the like, it's highly competitive. If it's competitive here, once you go over there, it's another league. If you're in the UK, US, for example.
Sure.
So when you are paying for those particular ads to get your brand and obviously get the lead generation happening, get the brand exposure and leads flowing, you want to make sure that your click-through rate's at its optimum. And just by having in Google, you might recall, you've probably seen it a million times. It's sort of quite subliminal, but you've got those little yellow stars that appear in the Google ads. Yeah. So that's they're Google seller ratings. So as a global Google partner, once you get a certain number of reviews and they're verified through our platform, you'll then qualify for those Google seller ratings. Really important, because it can increase your click-through rates quite substantially, so that your investments obviously increase. And then there's the other component that you want to do is not only have a greater presence and I suppose higher click-throughs in terms of Google, but you can also leverage those reviews on your own digital assets. So on the homepage of your website, you want to actually be displaying some user-generated content in the form of reviews to keep people on there, to minimize the bounce rates, to keep people clicking through. On the transaction page of your site as well, or your various product pages, you might like to have some level of proof point and consumers referring to other consumers, as we call it, the wisdom of the crowd. You're using that content, that user-generated content, on your own digital assets to improve that, that trust piece that we referred to before. So that they're both very important. And the other piece, and we briefly touched on this before. So there's clearly the Google seller ratings piece, but then there's also, it takes time to build your SEO in new markets. So when you think about, and I'll use the UK as an example, I refer to this just as a point of reference, but Trustpilot's domain authority and Trustpilot's ranking, if you like, there's more people going to Trustpilot in the UK than there is that reads the Guardian newspaper, right? So it is, at one stage, I think it still is, it was in like the top 20 most visited websites in the UK. So you've got the volume piece, and what comes with that domain authority and that sort of rich history, and that, if you like, the SEO that comes with that, is if a consumer's typing your brand plus reviews, or your category plus reviews, and you're on the Trustpilot, what we call a profile page, a customer profile page, it gets if you like, a leg up ranking from an SEO perspective based on our domain authority. And that is the benefit of being an open platform, in that we have these things called shared profile pages with the businesses that work with us. Mm-hmm. And the domain is Trustpilot and insert company name. And therefore our domain authority gives you if you like, a leg up from that perspective. And SEO is hard. Everyone knows that it takes time. It's an investment in time and money to get it right. So if you can get a leg up from that perspective, that's really useful to get your brand out there in the early days. And then as you invest in it, think about the rich content that's being written. Obviously, reviews are primarily in written form, and some are really short, but some are quite long. And you think about that content on your own homepages, etc., and your own assets is also sort of fueling that SEO as well. So you can look at it both from the short term sort of, if you like, benefit, but equally it's a long-term SEO benefit because of the nature of the content that's coming through.
So we'll be over at Singapore FinTech Festival in a couple of weeks, the world's largest FinTech conference with about 40 or 50 Australian FinTechs. And we've heard a bit from you about the UK, Europe, and America, North America. How is your presence across Asia and North Asia? You're responsible for the entire of the region as well. Do you have some interesting case studies or businesses you're working with in that region, and what is the penetration like?
Yeah, Asia's a really interesting one, and it's one that's close to my heart, having spent a number of years living over there, including Singapore, and working across the region. We've actually got an Asia. Our team is based in Melbourne, but we do a lot of business out of Asia, and it's interesting that the types of clients that we're winning over there, and it's again go back to that sort of market maturity. And so it's really interesting for us and an opportunity for us and our clients, because, again, my experience with Asia is sometimes in something like reviews, if we're talking about it relative to more mature markets like the UK or the US and even Australia, again, I referred to the gap narrowing. And what I've found with the Asian market is that gap can narrow very quickly. So once the Asian market picks up on a trend, it can move very, very swiftly, and we're seeing that with reviews. So yeah, the other piece for us is that when we're doing business with our Asian clients, what they're particularly interested in is exactly what we spoke about, which is the trust piece in some of those other markets. So they want to expand into the UK, they want to expand into the US, Europe, Australia, New Zealand. So they're looking for, that independent source of trust to help them, essentially expedite their global play. But equally, if you're talking about Australian businesses going over there, which I'm sure is part of your mission, it equally applies. Now, the statistics may not be the same as the mature markets in terms of the penetration of reviews and the like, but it is, as I say, it actually is sort of speeding up quite rapidly.
And on that momentum piece, how does it then drive further customer acquisition? Because I guess ultimately that's why a business is engaging with you guys.
Yeah, absolutely. That's primarily, again, it's using your own customers to help do the selling for you, and therefore, improve your customer acquisition cost, your CAC, etc., and in reducing that. And yeah, it's essentially, it builds that efficiency, based on, again, the SEO, the click-through rates, and really this model where, being an open review platform, there is a shared profile page. So for any of those customers or our clients that I mentioned before, you could jump on and type Prosper reviews, and you'll see the Trustpilot sort of pop up. Click on their open review page, and you will see all of their customer reviews sort of ranked by relevance or recency. You'll see their trust score. But what you'll also see is on the right-hand side, that panel of that particular open page is their own sort of advertising, and be it, links to various pages of the website. There'll be, some information about the business. So when consumers are going to that shared profile page, which they often do because of the SEO benefits and the like, they're actually they're not just seeing the consumer reviews. Yes, that takes up the majority of that particular page, but also there's some information that you can display for to those consumers. So yeah, consumers, be it local or global, given those sort of statistics that we spoke about in terms of the importance, when they do go to those pages, you want to present yourself in the best possible light and use that particular panel on that open review page to essentially use it from a branding and education piece to help them make the transactions and improve your customer acquisition costs.
And there is a lot more than just a 4.3 5-star rating as well. There's all those little bits and pieces that a fintech can add on through Trustpilot to showcase.
Yeah, and you're right. There is a lot more to the score, and the other piece of all the rich insights that can come with it as well. So you get that from a local perspective, but often locally you may have a closer read on the things that are working and how the product's viewed and the like. But what you will find, I'm sure you'll find some things that you're not aware of as well, right? Which can help you improve your product over time. So, our product will feed into our insights piece, and the review platform can feed into things like Slack channels. So everyone in the organization, from the CEO down to the new intern or the grad who's just come in, the product team who are really interested, you can have all those reviews sort of feeding through a Slack channel, and you can collaborate on that, and you can actually see, you can actually have meaningful conversations about what's working, but more importantly, what things may not be working that need to be fixed. And then there's a whole AI piece around it in terms of what are those trends? What are the keywords? What are the topics? What are the themes in terms of sentiment analysis that either are, or in some cases, it's even more important, aren't working well. So if you're doing that in new markets, and sometimes those markets may not be speaking English, if you're going across various parts of Europe, but you want the insights as to what's happening, then all of that rich content can be analysed and reviewed to give you that extra, I suppose, extra piece of information that you may be missing in your business at the moment.
And you're working with a number of our FinTech Australia members, Prosper being one of them, and you mentioned a few earlier on in the call. Are there any that really stand out to you as some case studies that might be those ones who you've worked with for a number of years and are looking at scaling overseas with the support of you?
Yeah, look, I think a couple that I touched on before. If you think Xero, Xero's a great one. Obviously, whether it be that you're a Kiwi or an Australian, what they've done.
We're both
globally,
Melburnians. We can claim them. They've got their global headquarters here. I hope still.
They have. It's just down the road. Drive past it every day to work. So, they've got thousands and thousands of reviews. They've got a 4.3-star rating, and they're using that, of course, to project themselves into other markets. And, they've got a long, rich history and a very successful one of growing globally. But they're a good example. Afterpay is another one. They've got, I think on last check, there was something like 172,000 reviews.
Wow.
And a 4.8-star rating. And again, global success story, one that, in Australia, we should be very proud of what they've done on a global stage. Reviews has obviously helped in different components of that market. And Wiser as well, they're obviously 4.7-star and international business as well. So they're probably three that come to mind. And then you've got, even in the crypto space, we've got clients like Banxa, who is headquartered in Melbourne, not far from our office in Cremorne. They're very much a global business that have been investing in reviews through Trustpilot for some time and sort of leveraging the ways that we spoke about before.
And a number of these companies are FinTech Australia members and partners, which just makes it even that much better. So there are a couple of companies there who obviously there's overlap with between Trustpilot and FinTech Australia, but for other companies that might not be in touch with you, or this might be their first time hearing about Trustpilot, how do they get in touch? What's the call to action?
Yeah, look, I encourage you to go to the website in the first instance and familiarise yourself with some case studies. Like we've skimmed a couple, but if you want to jump in there, have a look through some case studies. Obviously get familiar with the various pages and the like, and then like any SaaS business, there's a request demo page on there. So if you go to the business, because we have a consumer page and we have a business page. So if you go to the business website, you can jump on there, request a demo, and then someone from our team in Melbourne will contact you, set up an appropriate time, and take you through the platform, understand what it is that you're hoping to achieve. And then that conversation can take whatever direction the client wants to around what they're particularly interested in. So that would be a logical way to start. And we can certainly jump on a call, demonstrate in greater depth some of the things that we've discussed today.
So Cam, it has been awesome to chat with you. We're really thrilled to kick off the partnership between FinTech Australia and Trustpilot. Of course, we're not taking anything away from reviews at cafes and hotels, but I think reviews in the FinTech space, B2B space, and those companies that are innovative, scaling overseas is going to be really, really interesting. So thanks so much for your time.
Pleasure. We're looking forward to the partnership as well. Thanks, Stu.